The emergency room lights were harsh against the white walls, making everything look sharper and more accusatory than it should have. My 6-year-old son, Tommy, lay unconscious on the hospital bed, his small body looking even tinier under the bright fluorescent glare. His dinosaur shirt, the one he'd begged me to let him wear for the 3rd day in a row, was soaked with sweat. The monitors beeped steadily, each sound drilling into my skull like an accusation. Dr. Raven Holt stood at the foot of Tommy's bed, reviewing his chart with the expression that made my stomach twist. She was tall, professional, with steel-gray hair pulled back in a bun so tight it seemed to stretch her features into permanent disapproval. When she finally looked up at me, her eyes were cold. "Severe food poisoning," she announced, her voice cutting through the antiseptic air. "His symptoms indicate bacterial contamination from improperly stored or expired food." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the room like a blanket of judgment. Mothers should be more careful with what they feed their children. Food safety isn't something you can be casual about, Mrs. Morrison. The words hit me like a physical blow. I opened my mouth to respond, to explain that I checked every label, every date, that I was meticulous about food safety. But my mother-in-law, Dolores, spoke first. "I've been telling her that for years, Doctor," Dolores said, nodding her head with such vigor that her pearl necklace clicked against her collarbone. She stood beside my husband Derek, her manicured hand resting possessively on his arm. "Young mothers today think they know everything, but they don't understand basic kitchen safety. No respect for experience or tradition." I felt Derek shift beside me, but he didn't defend me. Instead, he added his own knife to the collection already in my back. "She never checks dates on anything," he said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "Last week I found expired yogurt in the kids' lunch boxes. I've talked to her about it, but she gets defensive." The lie was so smooth, so casual, that for a moment I wondered if I was losing my mind. I wanted to scream that it wasn't true, that Derek was the one who grabbed whatever was convenient, that I was the one who spent Sunday nights organizing the refrigerator and checking every expiration date with obsessive precision. But the words stuck in my throat, trapped by the weight of 3 adults looking at me like I had poisoned my own child. I stared at the floor, counting the tiles, trying to hold back tears that would only make me look more guilty. One tile had a small crack near the corner. I focused on it, using it as an anchor while the world spun around me. That's when I heard the small voice that changed everything. "Doctor, should I tell you what Grandma really put in Tommy's lunch?" My 8-year-old daughter, Mira, stood in the doorway, still wearing her school uniform, her backpack hanging off one shoulder. Our neighbor must have just dropped her off. Her eyes were fierce, protective, the same expression she wore when defending her little brother from playground bullies. But this time, she was facing down adults, including her grandmother. The room went ice cold. Not literally, but I swear I could feel the temperature drop as everyone turned to stare at my daughter. Dolores's face went from smug satisfaction to something else entirely. Fear? Anger? Her fingers tightened on Derek's arm until her knuckles went white. "Children have such vivid imaginations," Dolores said quickly, her voice pitched just a bit too high. "Mira's always been a creative child, makes up the most fantastic stories." But Mira didn't back down. She walked into the room with the confidence of someone who knew they held the truth, her light-up sneakers flashing with each determined step. She stopped right in front of Dr. Holt, ignoring her grandmother's laser stare. "It's not a story," Mira said clearly. "I saw everything. Grandma made Tommy's lunch today, not Mom, and I know exactly what she put in it because I watched her. She told me not to tell, but Tommy's really sick and Mom's getting blamed for something she didn't do." Dr. Holt's expression shifted from professional disdain to sharp attention. She looked between Mira and Dolores, then glanced at Tommy's chart again. "The patient's grandmother prepared his lunch?" "I made him a wholesome homemade meal," Dolores interjected quickly. "Fresh chicken salad, some pickled beets from my garden, and hand-squeezed lemonade. Everything organic and prepared this morning, unlike the processed garbage my daughter-in-law usually feeds them." Mira shook her head slowly. "That's not true. Grandma, tell them about the container from June. Tell them about the green stuff you scraped off." The beeping of Tommy's monitors seemed to grow louder in the sudden silence. Derek pulled his arm away from his mother's grasp, his face pale. "Mom, what is she talking about?" Dolores's carefully composed face began to crack. "This is ridiculous. I would never harm my grandson. This child is clearly upset and confused." "I'm not confused," Mira said, pulling her tablet from her backpack. "And I'm not making it up. I have proof." Tuesday morning started like every other Tuesday in our house, with me racing against the clock and losing. At 6:47 a.m., I stood in our kitchen, simultaneously making breakfast, packing backpacks, and trying to respond to a client email on my phone. The coffee maker gurgled its familiar morning song while I spread peanut butter on whole wheat bread, making sure to cut the crusts off Tommy's sandwich just the way he liked it. "Mom, is Grandma coming today?" Tommy bounced into the kitchen, his dinosaur pajamas on backward and inside out, his hair sticking up in 12 different directions. His excitement made my chest tighten with an emotion I couldn't quite name. "Yes, buddy, Grandma Dolores is watching you. And Mira this afternoon while I have my client meetings." I kept my voice neutral, the same tone I'd perfected over 2 years of this arrangement. Mira looked up from her cereal bowl, her expression far too knowing for an 8-year-old. "Great," she muttered, stabbing her spoon into her Cheerios like they'd personally offended her. "Mira, be nice," Derek said absently, scrolling through his phone at the breakfast table. He hadn't looked up once since sitting down, already absorbed in emails and market reports. "Your grandmother loves spending time with you." I wanted to point out that love and control weren't the same thing, but I bit my tongue. It was too early for that fight, and we'd had it so many times before that I could recite both our parts from memory. My phone buzzed with a text from Dolores. "I'll bring lunch for the children today. Something nutritious, not that processed poison you usually give them." The words stung as they always did. I looked at the fresh turkey I'd bought yesterday, the organic bread, the locally grown apples I'd picked up from the farmer's market specifically because Tommy loved them. Everything carefully selected, every expiration date checked twice. But it was never good enough for Dolores. "Your mom's bringing lunch again," I told Derek, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. "That's nice of her," he replied, still not looking up. "Saves you time, right?" I turned back to the counter, gripping the edge until my knuckles went white. Nice. That's what Derek always said about his mother's intrusions. Nice when she reorganized my pantry because things were in the wrong places. Nice when she threw out my children's artwork because clutter creates chaos. Nice when she told the pediatrician I was overreacting about Mira's allergies, nearly sending our daughter into anaphylactic shock. "Mom makes the best sandwiches," Tommy announced, wrapping his arms around my waist. "But Grandma says hers are better because they're made with Grandma love." "All sandwiches in this house are made with love," I said, kissing the top of his messy head. He smelled like strawberry shampoo and little boy dreams. "Yeah, but Grandma says her love is more experienced," Tommy replied innocently, not understanding the barb hidden in those words. Mira snorted. "Grandma says a lot of things." "Mira Grace Morrison." Derek finally looked up, his voice sharp. "That's enough. Apologize. For what?" "Telling the truth?" Mira crossed her arms, a miniature version of my own stubborn streak. "For being disrespectful," Derek said, using his father voice, the one that brooked no argument. Mira mumbled an apology that fooled no one, then grabbed her backpack. "I'm going to brush my teeth." After she left, Derek finally put his phone down. "You need to talk to her about her attitude toward my mother." "Her attitude?" I turned to face him fully. "Your mother tells our children that I'm poisoning them with store-bought food. She undermines me constantly. She's trying to help. She raised 3 kids successfully." "Successfully?" "Your brother hasn't spoken to her in 5 years, and your sister moved across the country to get away from her." Derek's jaw tightened. "That's different. And anyway, she means well. You're too sensitive about this stuff." Too sensitive. The phrase that had become his shield against every concern I raised about his mother. I was too sensitive when she rearranged our wedding photos to put herself in the center. Too sensitive when she told the neighbors I was a neglectful mother for working from home. Too sensitive when she fed Tommy dairy despite his lactose intolerance, and he spent the night in agony. The doorbell rang at exactly 10 a.m. Dolores never came a minute early or late, her punctuality another way to demonstrate her superiority. She swept in wearing her trademark pearls and a smile that never quite reached her eyes, carrying her wicker basket like a weapon. "Hello, my darlings," she cooed at the children, then looked at me. "Celeste, I see you're working in pajamas again. How professional." I was wearing yoga pants and a clean t-shirt, but I didn't correct her. I'd learned that defending myself only gave her more ammunition. Instead, I kissed my children goodbye, gathered my laptop for the upstairs office, and tried to ignore the feeling that I was leaving them in enemy territory. At 1:15 p.m., I was in the middle of presenting mock-ups to my biggest client when my phone lit up on my desk. The school's number flashed across the screen. I never interrupted client meetings, but something cold settled in my stomach. Schools didn't call unless something was wrong. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Chen. I need to take this emergency call," I said, already reaching for the phone. "Mrs. Morrison?" The school nurse's voice was professionally calm, but I could hear the urgency underneath. "Tommy collapsed during recess. He's being transported to Riverside Hospital right now. You need to come immediately." The laptop slammed shut. I don't remember ending the video call or grabbing my keys. I just remember running, my bare feet hitting the garage floor because I'd forgotten shoes, having to turn back, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the car started. The 15-minute drive to Riverside took forever, and no time at all. Derek met me in the parking lot, his face pale. "Mom's already inside with him. She said he was fine when she dropped him off after lunch." We ran through the emergency room doors together. The smell of disinfectant and fear hit me immediately. A nurse directed us to room 7, where Tommy lay on a gurney that dwarfed his small body. His face was ghost white, beaded with sweat, and his eyes were closed. An IV drip was already attached to his tiny arm. "Tommy, baby, Mommy's here," I whispered, touching his burning forehead. He stirred but didn't open his eyes. Dolores stood in the corner, wringing her hands. He was perfectly fine when I left him at school, ate every bite of his lunch like a good boy. Dr. Raven Holt entered, all business and clipboard efficiency. "Are you the parents?" When we nodded, she continued, "Your son presented with severe vomiting, fever of 103.4 and dehydration. What did he eat today?" "I packed his usual lunch this morning," I started, but Dolores cut me off. "No, I gave him lunch today," she said, stepping forward with an air of authority. "I brought homemade food, a chicken salad sandwich on fresh bread, some of my pickled beets from the garden, and fresh squeezed lemonade. All organic, doctor, not like the processed garbage usually in their fridge." Dr. Holt made notes on her clipboard. "When was this chicken salad made?" "This morning," Dolores said confidently. "Fresh as can be. I always make everything from scratch for my grandchildren." Tommy suddenly lurched forward and vomited into the basin the nurse quickly provided. The sound of his retching filled the small room. The nurse checked his temperature again and frowned at the reading. "This looks like severe food poisoning," Dr. Holt announced, her tone shifting from clinical to accusatory. "The onset time suggests contaminated food consumed 2 to 3 hours ago." She turned her sharp gaze on me. "Mothers should be more careful with what they feed their children. Food safety isn't optional, Mrs. Morrison. A child's immune system can't handle the bacteria that develops in improperly stored food." The condescension in her voice made my cheeks burn. "I didn't pack his lunch today. My mother-in-law just told you she did." But Dolores was already nodding along with the doctor. "I've been telling her that for years, doctor. She never listens to experienced mothers. Young parents today think they can just Google everything, but they don't understand basic food safety. My generation knew how to properly care for children." "She's right about some things," Derek said quietly, and I felt my heart crack. "She never checks dates on anything. Last week, the milk was 3 days past expiration. I've talked to her about it repeatedly." The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that I wondered if he'd convinced himself it was true. The milk had been his purchase, his oversight, but somehow in his memory it had become my fault. Everything always became my fault when his mother was involved. "That's not true," I said, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. The 3 of them stood there, a united front of judgment, while I felt myself shrinking. "Denial doesn't help your son," Dr. Holt said curtly. "We're running tests for Salmonella, E. coli, and Listeria. This could have been prevented with basic food safety practices." Tommy whimpered, reaching for me with his small hand. "Mommy, my tummy hurts so bad." "I know, baby. The doctors are going to make it better." I held his hand, feeling the heat radiating from his skin. The nurse added another bag to his IV. "We need to get his fever down and keep him hydrated. The blood work should tell us what we're dealing with." "In my day, children weren't so fragile," Dolores said, shaking her head. "A little stomach upset never killed anyone. This generation coddles their children, then wonders why they can't handle anything." "Mom, he's seriously ill," Derek said, though his tone was more pleading than firm. "I'm just saying that when you were young, you ate what I gave you and survived just fine. No special organic this or allergen-free that. Real food, prepared with common sense." I wanted to scream that her common sense had landed my baby in the emergency room, but I just stared at the cracked tile on the floor, counting my breaths, trying not to cry. 1, 2, 3, 4. The monitors beeped. Tommy whimpered, and I stood there, drowning in their judgment while my son suffered. The emergency room door swung open, and Mira rushed in, still wearing her school uniform. Mrs. Patterson, our neighbor, stood behind her looking flustered. "I'm sorry, Celeste. The school called me when they couldn't reach you again. Mira insisted on coming straight here." "Mom!" Mira ran to me, but her eyes were fixed on Tommy. "Is he going to be okay?" "He'll be fine, sweetheart," I said, though the words felt hollow. Tommy hadn't opened his eyes in 20 minutes, and his skin had taken on a grayish tinge that made my chest tight with fear. Mira tugged on my sleeve insistently. "Mom, I need to tell you something. It's really important." "Not now, sweetheart," I whispered, watching the nurse adjust Tommy's IV for the third time. His little body looked so fragile against the white sheets. "But Mom, I saw what Grandma did." Her voice was urgent, desperate to be heard. The room grew quiet. Even the monitors seemed to pause between beeps. Dolores' smile faltered, her fingers tightening on her pearl necklace. "Children have such imaginations, don't they?" Dolores said, her laugh brittle as winter ice. "Mira's always been a creative child, makes up the most fantastic stories. Remember when she told everyone I threw away her art project? Such a vivid imagination." "You did throw away my art project," Mira said flatly. "You said it was trash cluttering the house." "Mira," Derek warned, using his stern father voice, "this isn't the time for your stories." Something shifted in my daughter's face. At 8 years old, she straightened her spine and looked directly at Dr. Holt with a determination that made her seem years older. "Doctor, should I tell you what Grandma really put in Tommy's lunch?" The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. Derek looked between his mother and daughter, confusion replacing his earlier certainty. Dolores' face flushed red, then went pale. "That's quite enough, young lady," Dolores said sharply. "You're upset about your brother, and that's understandable, but making up tales won't help anyone." "I'm not making anything up," Mira said clearly. She pulled her tablet from her backpack, the one I'd given her for her birthday, decorated with unicorn stickers. "Mom taught me to document everything after what happened last year." "What happened last year?" Dr. Holt asked, her attention now fully on Mira. "Grandma gave me cookies with peanuts even though I'm allergic. She said my allergy was all in my head, that Mom was being overprotective. I ended up in this same emergency room with my throat closing up. She told everyone Mom must have given me the wrong food." Derek's face went white. "Mom, you said Mira got into something at school." "The child is confused," Dolores insisted, but her voice had lost its commanding tone. Mira shook her head. "I'm not confused. Today, when Grandma was making Tommy's lunch, I watched her. She went to the back of her refrigerator and pulled out a container with tape on it. The tape said June. It's October, Doctor." "That's a lie," Dolores' voice cracked. "I would never endanger my grandson." "You said, and I quote," Mira continued, her voice steady, "what Celeste doesn't know won't hurt her. These modern mothers are too paranoid about expiration dates. A little aged food builds character." Dr. Holt stepped forward, her entire demeanor shifting from judgmental to alarmed. "Mrs. Morrison Sr., did you serve expired food to this child?" "It wasn't expired. It was aged. There's a difference. Like cheese or wine. Food doesn't go bad just because of some arbitrary date printed on a label. That's just corporations trying to make us buy more. You scraped green stuff off it, Mira added quietly. You said it was just a little mold, that it wouldn't hurt anyone, that you'd eaten worse during the Depression. But Grandma, you weren't even born during the Depression. Derek stumbled backward, gripping the wall for support. Mom, please tell me she's lying. Tell me you didn't feed our son moldy food. It wasn't moldy, just a tiny bit of discoloration. I removed it all. The rest was perfectly fine. You ate food like that all the time growing up, and you turned out healthy. I had chronic stomach problems my entire childhood, Derek said slowly, as if pieces of a puzzle were finally clicking into place. You always said I had a weak constitution, that I was too sensitive like Dad. Your father was weak, Dolores snapped. I was making you stronger. Mira held up her tablet. I have video, Doctor. Mom told me if Grandma ever did anything dangerous again, I should record it for proof. She didn't believe me about the peanut cookies until it was too late. The room fell silent except for Tommy's labored breathing and the steady beep of monitors. Dr. Holt looked at me, and for the first time since we'd arrived, her expression held something other than judgment. Show me the video, she said to Mira, her voice gentle but urgent. Mira touched her tablet screen, and Dolores's kitchen came to life in vivid detail. The video was slightly shaky, filmed from a low angle where Mira must have propped the tablet against the backsplash while pretending to do homework at the kitchen table. But the image was clear enough, the audio crystal sharp. On screen, Dolores opened her refrigerator, pushing past fresh containers to reach deep into the back. She pulled out a Tupperware container with yellowed tape across the lid. Even through the video, we could see June 2024 written in her distinctive handwriting. Perfect. Video Dolores muttered to herself. This chicken salad was Derek's favorite. No reason it can't be Tommy's too. She popped open the lid, and even she recoiled slightly at first. Then she grabbed a spoon and began scraping at the surface, removing a distinctly green-gray film. Just a little oxidation, she said to herself. People today are so wasteful. My mother would have tanned my hide for throwing away perfectly good food. The real Dolores in the hospital room tried to grab the tablet. Turn that off. You had no right to record me in my own home. Derek blocked her, his face ashen. Let it play. On screen, Dolores mixed mayonnaise into the old chicken salad, adding fresh celery and onions. Cover the taste, she muttered. Children never know the difference anyway. Celeste thinks she's so perfect with her organic this and her fresh that. She has no idea what it takes to raise strong children. They need exposure to build immunity. A little bacteria never killed anyone. She spread the mixture thick on white bread, added lettuce to hide any discoloration, and wrapped it carefully in wax paper. The camera caught her smiling at her handiwork. What Celeste doesn't know won't hurt her. Or Tommy. The boy needs to toughen up anyway, always whining about tummy aches, just like his father was. Too sensitive. Dr. Holt grabbed the emergency room phone before the video even finished. I need security to room 7 immediately, and contact the lab. Tell them the Morrison sample is priority 1. Suspected deliberate food contamination. This is ridiculous. Dolores's voice pitched high with panic. I'm his grandmother. I love him. You fed him 4-month-old chicken salad? Derek's voice broke completely. Mom, he could die from that. Do you understand? He could die. Tommy stirred on the bed, whimpering. Daddy? Derek rushed to his side, tears streaming down his face. I'm here, buddy. I'm so sorry. Daddy's so sorry. Dr. Holt was already barking orders to the nurses. Start him on broad-spectrum antibiotics immediately. I want blood cultures every 2 hours. Watch for signs of sepsis. This isn't standard food poisoning anymore. This is criminal endangerment. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Dolores backed against the wall. You're all overreacting. I raised 3 children. And how many times did we almost die? Derek turned on her, his voice raw. How many times did you tell us we were just weak? That we needed to toughen up? I remember being so sick I couldn't stand, and you just gave me ginger ale and told me to stop being dramatic. You survived, didn't you? We survived despite you, not because of you. Derek's control finally shattered. Robert doesn't speak to you. Jennifer moved across the country, and I've spent my entire adult life defending you, making excuses for you, letting you poison my own family because I couldn't admit my mother was trying to hurt us." Dr. Holt stepped between them. "Mr. Morrison, I need you to focus on your son right now. Mrs. Morrison Sr., you need to go with security. The police will want to speak with you." "The police?" Dolores's voice went shrill. "For making lunch? For deliberately feeding contaminated food to a minor," Dr. Holt said coldly. "Your own granddaughter has provided evidence of premeditation. You knew the food was spoiled. You attempted to hide it. And based on what I'm hearing, this isn't the first time." Mira suddenly spoke up, her small voice cutting through the chaos. "Last month, she gave Tommy milk that smelled sour. She said it was just getting tangy, like yogurt. He threw up all night. She told Dad that Mom must have given him something bad at dinner." I pulled Mira close, finally finding my voice. "You've been protecting him all along, haven't you?" "Someone had to," Mira said simply. "You and Dad were always fighting about it, and no one ever believed me. So I started recording everything. I have 17 videos, Mom. 17 times Grandma gave us bad food or dangerous things." The security guard stepped forward. "Ma'am, you need to come with us." Dolores looked at Derek desperately. "You're going to let them do this to your mother after everything I've done for you?" "Everything you've done?" Derek laughed, but it was bitter and broken. "You've been slowly poisoning my family while I stood by and let it happen. Get her out of here. Get her away from my children." As security escorted Dolores out, she turned back one last time. "This is Celeste's fault. She turned you all against me. I was making them stronger." The door closed behind her, and the room felt suddenly larger, emptier, but somehow cleaner too. Tommy's breathing had steadied, the antibiotics beginning their work. His color was already improving, the gray tinge fading from his skin. Dr. Holt turned to me, her expression completely transformed. "Mrs. Morrison, I owe you an apology. Your food safety practices were never the issue. Your children are lucky to have a mother who taught them to protect themselves, even when the adults around them failed to listen." Tommy spent 3 days in the hospital. The lab results confirmed what we feared: severe salmonella poisoning with early signs of E. coli. Dr. Holt told us that another 12 hours without treatment could have resulted in kidney failure. My 6-year-old son almost died because his grandmother believed expired food built character. I didn't leave his side for those 3 days. Derek barely did either. We took shifts sleeping in the uncomfortable chair beside Tommy's bed, watching his chest rise and fall, counting each breath like a promise. The antibiotics worked their slow magic, fighting the bacteria that Dolores had called harmless. On the second day, while Tommy slept, Derek broke down completely. "I almost lost him because I wouldn't listen to you. How many times did you try to tell me something was wrong? How many times did I call you paranoid?" "You were protecting your idea of her," I said, too exhausted for anger. "The mother you wanted her to be, not the one she actually was. I chose her over you, over our kids. Every single time I chose her." He held his head in his hands. "What kind of father does that?" "One who's learning," I said, because despite everything, I could see the genuine horror in his eyes. The wall of denial he'd built over 34 years had finally crumbled, and he was seeing the truth for the first time. Mira stayed with my sister during those hospital days, but she video called every few hours to check on Tommy. During one call, she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Mom, is Grandma going to jail?" "I don't know, sweetheart. She has to talk to the police and maybe a judge. What she did was dangerous and wrong." "But she won't watch us anymore, right? Promise?" "Never again, I promise." The police investigation revealed more than we'd imagined. When they searched Dolores's house, they found a refrigerator full of expired food, some dating back 2 years. She had notebooks where she documented her experiments in building immunity in her grandchildren. The prosecutor called it one of the most disturbing cases of child endangerment she'd seen that didn't involve obvious malice. Dolores was charged with felony child endangerment and assault. She pleaded guilty to avoid jail time, receiving 2 years of probation and 500 hours of community service at a food safety program. The judge also ordered psychiatric evaluation and mandatory therapy. Derek's siblings both submitted statements about their own childhood illnesses, patterns that suddenly made terrible sense. The real healing began after we got home. Derek started individual therapy, then we began marriage counseling together. For the first time in our relationship, he was truly present, no longer splitting his loyalty between his mother and his family. "I need to tell you something," he said during one session. "The expired milk you supposedly never check? I bought that, I forgot about it." But when Mom pointed it out, it was easier to agree with her than admit I'd made a mistake. I've been doing that our whole marriage, haven't I? Making you the scapegoat so I didn't have to confront her. The therapist helped us rebuild from that honesty. It wasn't easy. Trust, once broken, takes time to repair. But Derek showed up for every session, every conversation, every difficult moment of accountability. 3 months later, our family had found a new rhythm. Tuesday afternoons, instead of Dolores watching the kids, we had a new tradition. Derek would leave work early, and we'd all cook dinner together. Tommy became our official expiration date checker, reading each label with the seriousness of a health inspector. He even made a sign for our kitchen. Tommy's food rules: 1. Check dates. 2. Trust Mom. 3. If Grandma cooked it, run. We framed it above the refrigerator. Mira's quick thinking had saved her brother's life. But more than that, she taught us all something vital about speaking truth to power. At 8 years old, she'd stood up to 3 adults who were wrong, armed with nothing but the truth and a tablet full of evidence. "You're my hero," I told her one evening as I tucked her into bed. "I'm not a hero, Mom. I just couldn't let them blame you anymore, and I couldn't let Tommy get hurt. That's what family does, right? We protect each other." "Yes," I said, kissing her forehead. "That's exactly what family does." The truth is, I learned something crucial through this nightmare. For years, I doubted myself, let others make me question my instincts as a mother. I'd checked those expiration dates obsessively, not because I was paranoid, but because some part of me knew something was wrong. That maternal instinct I'd been taught to suppress, it had been right all along. Sometimes the most dangerous threats come wrapped in pearl necklaces and claims of experience. Sometimes they call themselves family while slowly poisoning everything they touch. But sometimes, if you're very lucky, an 8-year-old with a tablet and unshakable courage will stand up and say the words everyone else is too afraid to speak. My name is Celeste Morrison, and this is the story of how my daughter saved my son's life by exposing a grandmother who believed that love meant making children sick to make them strong. It's a story about the danger of staying silent, the power of speaking up, and the importance of trusting your instincts, especially when everyone tells you you're wrong. Tommy made a full recovery. He's a healthy, thriving little boy who still wears his dinosaur shirts backward and fills our home with laughter. But now he also knows that love doesn't hurt your stomach. Family doesn't make you sick, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tell the truth, even when the grown-ups don't want to hear it. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been made to doubt your instincts or been blamed for someone else's actions, please share this video. Your story might help someone else find their voice. Leave a comment below about a time when you had to stand up for the truth, even when it was difficult. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories of families finding their way through crisis to truth. Remember, trust your instincts, protect your children, and never let anyone make you feel crazy for keeping them safe.